Hey, friend, Chris here from LogicProRules.com, the website that helps you get the most you can out of Apple's Logic Pro. Man, last week was incredible. The latest versions of Logic Pro for Mac 11.1, iPad 2.1 dropped in the app stores, and for the Mac version, what we received was a whole bunch of features many of us Logic users have been waiting a very long time for, right? Namely, number one, the fact that you can finally rearrange the channel strips in the mixer with a simple click, hold, and drag. Man, isn't it a beautiful thing? Number two, the fact that you can load a plugin, an instrument, a MIDI effect, input, output, send assignment, sidechain assignment. You can load the thing that you're thinking about. Instead of diving through submenus, you can just type in the thing you're thinking about and hit return. And what I've loaded, number three, probably in the mind of Apple, is the breakout feature of this update, is the brand new reverb plugin, the Quantec Room Simulator. And there's actually two versions. There's the Quantec QRS, the original version of this digital reverb that came out in the 80s, and then the Quantec Yardstick, which is the updated version. And I have to say, the Quantec Room Simulator sounds amazing. I hope you've had a chance to play with it. I'm in love with it. This particular digital reverb is well renowned for the quality of its realism, just the quality and texture of the reverb. It doesn't have the same artifacts and problems of typical digital reverbs. And I want to test it out. I want to play it on an acoustic guitar track and point out three things that I think you should keep in mind when using the Quantecs. This is kind of like things to watch out for, but also some tips and tricks. So first, before we listen to the Quantec, let's take a listen to this acoustic guitar as it is right now, completely dry. Take a listen. All right, so there's our acoustic guitar. Let's now turn on the Quantec. And first things first, I want to be candid. When it comes to reverbs, personally, I just pick through presets. I don't mess around with the 100 different controls in a reverb. I just want to find a sound that sounds good quickly and efficiently and just move on with my life. So let's start there. Let's poke through some of the presets because there are some awesome presets. I'm going to take a look at the medium rooms here, and I'm going to choose this club atmosphere for my acoustic guitar. And let's take a listen to what this sounds like just as it is. I'm playing with the reverb level, but man, the bloom of that club sound, I love it. And we take a listen to the Community Center preset, which uses the Yardstick. Take a listen. If we take a look at under the QRS Classics, there's some presets for the Yardstick in the form of plates. Let's take a listen to the different presets. Okay, so I just want to point this out to you. The presets are a great place to start. It's a great place to live. You don't have to play around with controls in a reverb if you don't feel like it. So let's go to the small room section. I'm going to choose the studio preset, and we'll take a listen to this real quick. All right, so our list. Number one is as I was poking through the different presets, I would try turning down the dry level or the reverb level to get a sense of the balance of what the reverb is contributing. Now check it out. I'm going to hit play and then I'm going to turn the reverb level down. Take a listen. Okay, so I've reduced the reverb, I've muted it, and yet there's still something there. It doesn't feel like the reverb has been completely turned off. So let's turn down the dry level. What I wanted to point out was Basically, I'm used to reverbs that have a mix control or a separate wet and dry slider. If we bypass the Quantec, if we load, in this example, Space Designer, this is what I'm used to. We have dry for the dry signal, wet for the wet signal, and you can balance between them. Right? But in the case of the Quantecs, there's a separate slider for the first reflection. And I didn't expect this. I thought just reverb level was the wet slider. So that's what I wanted to point out to you. Number one is just that there's a separate control for first reflection, which is pretty cool actually, because you can really achieve the balance you want in terms of first reflections and reverb. So like the first bounce and then the tail of the reverb. So let's play around with it just to do so. Now, that sounds a little crazy, right? Like what happened there? I delayed the first reflection. So now it's more a distinct reflection separate from the dry signal, the acoustic guitar. And of course, you could always delay the reverb as well, the tail. So that's number one. PSA, the early or first reflection rather, the first reflection has its own separate wet slider. So number two, now we get into a tip or a trick. Many of us like to use the Haas effect to create width or to create this sense of like there's two instruments going, not necessarily just one. If you're not familiar, the Haas effect is typically executed using a delay plugin. So I'm going to go to the delays to sample delay. And just to keep it simple and sweet, I'm going to delay one side of what is now a stereo channel strip. So we have a left side, a right side. I'm going to delay the right side by about 30 milliseconds. And take a listen. We went from a single mono guitar to what feels like two separate guitars. This is some acoustic shenanigans that we're playing right now, and it definitely has to be a stereo channel strip. You know, I changed the channel strip from mono to stereo using the Quantec Room Simulator. If these weren't here, in that case, I would have to select the sample delay plugin and choose mono to stereo, right? But now we've created this sense of almost like two guitars. And if you assign this to a separate send, so if I go to bus 1, for example, and place the sample delay plugin as a stereo instance, we can have our mono guitar, but have that sense of width and space around the guitar. But keep in mind, we probably want to delay both sides now by different amounts. So anyways, all this to say, a lot of folks like to use the Haas effect. With the QRS, you can achieve a Haas effect type of thing very quickly and easily. So we're going to choose the Yardstick. I'm going to turn down the dry level and the reverb level completely and turn up the first reflection level so we can get a sense of what's going on. And we're going to focus our attention on the secondary panel here because there are further controls for the first reflections. But once again, I have to set this to a mono to stereo instance in this case because it's a mono channel strip. All right, so now I have first reflection delay and first reflection spread. Take a listen to the first reflection as it is. Sounds indistinguishable from the original dry signal. If I play them together, we get this horrific phasey sound, and that's because we basically have a carbon copy of the acoustic guitar playing side by side, but it's delayed by 1 millisecond. So a lot of phasiness is going on. That's okay. We're going to change that. Now, in the secondary tab, we have this first reflection spread control, which basically allows you to increase the spread, get that Haas effect going for whatever signal that's playing through the Quantec for that first reflection. So check it out. You can go in positive territory or negative. Notice as I'm dragging into the negative territory, the first reflection delay starts to adapt as well. So we'll just stick with, in this case, the positive territory. But take a listen as I increase this reflection spread. All right, so now we're getting the stereo effect. That's pretty cool, before and after. Beautiful. Let's hear it alongside the dry signal. All right, so you get that sense of width now around the acoustic guitar, but still sounds kind of phasey. And that's because we still have to delay the reverb, so it's not landing almost in time with the original acoustic guitar. So I'm going to increase the delay. It will sound kind of weird as I'm increasing it, but check it out. Now we're getting more of a distinct sound. Now, if I blend this, maybe about -8, -10, take a listen. That's pretty awesome. And then you can increase the reverb level and get that tail going as well. So that's pretty sick. That's a really cool way to add width to your tracks, even if you don't use the reverb level, but you just use the first reflections. All right, so number 3, we're going to focus on the Yardstick because the Yardstick has a bit more control than the Quantec QRS. But with the Yardstick, if we take a look in the extended controls here, so I'm going to bring down the dry and the first reflection, bring up the reverb level. If we go to the extended controls, there are these interesting parameters called left correlation pattern and right correlation pattern. Some of these terms are not immediately obvious, but if you go into the quick help here in the upper left-hand corner, I have it pop up in the inspector here. Notice as I hover my mouse over the left correlation pattern, this tells us this allows you to choose a predefined virtual microphone position in the reverb chamber for the left signal. And if we choose the same exact number for both sides, you get a mono output. So we get to choose different microphone positions within the space. That is sick. All right. So let's just set both of these to 7. Right? We'll get that mono output. Take a listen. So we're just hearing the guitar right now, just the reverb, straight down the center, because they're identical. Now let's set the right correlation pattern to something else, like 22. So now we're getting that stereo width, and it's just creating a cool effect. Let's choose another number, such as 31. Or even higher. All right, so 48, we're getting a little more low-end activity now. Let's try changing the left correlation pattern to be a little closer to the right, but not exactly the same. So there's a lot of cool opportunity within these other panels. I recognize, again, the language can be very confusing and kind of off-putting or just a little intimidating, but just by using the quick help, which is really well worth popping open once in a while just to learn about new things. You can learn about some of these extra parameters that can be a huge help when you want to customize the reverb to suit your needs. So again, I hope you've had a chance to check out the Quantec Room Simulator. If you haven't, hopefully this video and last week's video will encourage you to do so because they sound incredible. Also, I hope this video was helpful for you. If it has, please subscribe to Wide Logic Pro Rules here on the channel and on the website, and please be sure to check out the description below where I always include links to PDFs, guides, and templates to help you in your journey with Logic Pro. Thanks so much, and I'll talk to you later. Take care.